Peeking is one of the most important skills in Valorant, however it is often overlooked. Everyone talks about aim and crosshair placement, but knowing how to peek properly is what separates the lower and higher ranks. Hi guys, this is Eggwick, and today I'm going to teach you how to peek better in Valorant. If you like this video, please consider subscribing for more quality Valorant content in the future. Now let's get into it. First, let's start off with the most common mistake players make when peeking, and that is shift walking while peeking an angle. If you peek while walking, you make yourself a very easy target for the opposing player. Here's the difference between someone shift walking and someone who is peeking at full speed. It's much harder for the enemy to react to you when you're not walking all the time. If you watch any pro or high level Valorant gameplay, you'll see that they're barely peeking while holding shift. This is also the reason why you shouldn't be using ADS to peek corners, as it'll make you much slower than normal. Another thing is that if the enemy already knows your location, it's useless to be walk peeking someone. This happens a lot in clutch scenarios, so just be aware of what info has been given away and use that to your advantage. But wait, I want to remain silent while I peek. If I run, then I'm going to make a sound. If you didn't know, you can peek angles at full speed without making a sound by releasing the movement key after half a second. I'm not 100% sure on the timing, but try it out in a custom game and you'll feel it for yourself. There's a set distance you can move before making a sound, and you should get used to the timing as you'll want to almost always be peeking this way instead of shift walking, as again, it'll make you a much harder target to hit. When peeking common angles, you also want to pre-aim your crosshair at the spot where an enemy's head will be. This means that you're factoring in your end location into your crosshair placement. Oftentimes, you're going to be aiming at the wall right before you peek, but after you've moved to your end location, your crosshair placement will be directly on the enemy's head. Pre-aiming is something that goes hand in hand when peeking common angles, but doesn't work for off angles. Moving on to the goal of peeking. A good peek is centered around either gathering information, baiting a shot, or killing an enemy, all while making it hard for the opposing player to hit you. Now, each peek you make will have different goals, but whatever the goal of your peek is, the main thing is that you want to be isolating angles and not opening yourself up to multiple sightlines. There isn't a default peek, as you're going to have to judge how wide you need to swing in order to clear certain spots, and it's going to be a trade-off based on educated guesses on where the enemy will be. For example, if I want to clear CT on Haven A site from short or sewers, I'm going to have to expose myself to heaven. You can try to peek as close to the wall as possible, but with how the angles work, you're still going to be exposed. This is where utility comes in, as it helps isolate angles to make your peeks easier. A lot of lower ranked players will peek an angle, put themselves out in the open, and then complain that they died to someone from another area. In order to remedy this problem, I'm going to teach you the different types of peeks and how to utilize them properly so that you can bring value to your team more consistently. First is the Jiggle Peek. The goal of this peek is to gain information while still being relatively safe. This is the peek where you barely show your body to the opponent. Sometimes you even have your knife out to increase movement speed. It's a precise peek that takes some practice to master, as you want to have the bare minimum of your body showing so that you stay hard to hit. Sometimes, players will pre-fire when they jiggle an angle, which is a great way to try to get some kills. You want to be using this peek often, as it provides the best risk versus reward outcome. Remember, the goal is to isolate angles. If you're jiggling and opening yourself up to multiple sightlines, then it's useless. Next is the wide peek. This is the opposite of peeking narrow, as you're going to swing far from the corner. You generally don't want to be wide peeking alone, as you tend to open yourself up to multiple sightlines, but this is map dependent. Usually, you're going to be wide peeking when you have a teammate peeking narrow or following up after your peek. If you're wide peeking alone, you're going to be punished heavily if you don't hit your shots. Next is the crouch peek. This is peeking and crouching at the same time to throw off your enemy's crosshair placement. Depending on your rank, this could be a good and bad thing. I'd suggest not doing this peek in lower ranks, as players tend to have worse crosshair placement and might accidentally headshot you because they were aiming for the body. In higher ranks, this is a great way to mix up your gameplay, as players generally tend to aim for the head. Last but not the least is the jump peek. This peek is used solely to gather information, unlike the jiggle peek. To perform this, you need to jump to the right or to the left and air strafe back to your original position using the opposite movement key and backwards or the S key. If you do this properly, you barely show yourself and throw off your enemy's crosshair placement while still getting a bit of info. Now, this might take some time to master as well, but if you can perfect it, jump peeking for information is a great tool to have in your arsenal. The most common use of this is on top mid on Ascent, where attackers will usually jump peek the box to bait the opper, or B site on split for defenders. Lastly, here's a bonus tip to help you get more kills. This might already be known, but for those who don't know it, you can ping a spot on the map to help align your crosshair. This will ping the ground, so be sure to compensate for height and try to imagine where the enemy's head will be. This is great for entry fraggers and peeks at the start of the round because it gives you a better idea of where the enemy will be, as you can see the ping through line of sight. It's also perfect for areas that have been smoked or blocked off. More importantly, if you're dead and in a post-plant situation, you should be pinging the bomb for your teammates so they can spray through smoke. I primarily use this when peeking mid on Ascent, A long on Haven, and A short on Bind, but feel free to use this wherever you want. I find it very useful in improving the quality of my peeks, and it's gotten me a bunch of entry frags in the past. If there's one thing you should take away from this video, it's that you shouldn't be shift walking or aiming down sights when you peek someone. If you have that habit, then you need to unlearn it because it's what's holding you back from getting a higher rank. You should be switching up the way you peek an enemy to keep them on their toes and make you less predictable. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. This is Egwick, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.